What's the most important realization you've ever had? Self-insight on mental health. When I realized that your mental health isn't always your fault, but it's always your responsibility. It framed my mindset in a new way to start to untangle some of the wires up there and keep them untangled. It gets better when you find the way to make it better. No one thinks about / cares about my screw ups as much as I do. So don't be embarrassed about old shit. THIS carrot. The older you get, the less you can relate to your younger self. Today's me and 2015's me are different animals. It's called the invisible audience. It happens in adolescence, when we have a return of earlier childhood egocentrism. According to Piaget, at the same time we also develop a belief in the personal fable, which is where the teenage/young adult idea of what invincibility comes from. Sorry, studying for the EPPP right now. I should not have sold my GameStop stock 2 weeks ago. That was not a good choice. Do not accept critics from people you would never ask advice from. Literally changed my life. Life is very short, so you don't have the obligation to spend time with people you don't like. Another one that is a life changer. That being social is a skill you can practice and get better at. I always just had this idea that some people were well liked and could have good conversations and I couldn't, and I would just have to learn to live with that. But then I realized that doesn't have to be the case. I'm still working on it, but my life has improved so much already that I don't really hate people. I just hate the things people do. That everyone won't do the right thing and or be a good person when the situation calls for it. I've been disappointed way too many times. It is what it is now. That it's perfectly okay to deviate from the life narrative I grew up with of getting married, having kids, loving Jesus, etc. It's okay to follow your own way and do what makes you tick. What matters is doing your best to be a good person and to figure out what's fulfilling for you. Beyond that, if people don't get it or doubt you, who cares? Come to think of, religions are really ducked up, literally brainwashing. Having to believe and love an imaginary guy just cause a bunch of people says so. Just how easy is to manipulate, scary, and effective. My ex-friends only would believe what they wanted to believe, and their victim mentally is not my problem. I don't need to have children. I always thought of it as something that you just do, but I'm in 20s, and I have zero interest. I'd make a terrible mother. My outlook on life improved significantly. That my parents were doing the best they could for me and never intended to give me these issues that I have. Now that I'm older I can understand some of their decisions better. It doesn't make my resentments go away, but does give me a little perspective. If I can understand it, I may someday be able to get past it. Shaving my head makes me way happier. For insight, I was losing my hair and decided to shave it. Great. Then I got a GF and things were great through 2020 besides the whole pandemic and work concerns. She was curious how I would look with hair. So I figured, okay, I'll grow it out for you. Things got bad. She ended up dumping me, and I was the good/great/perfect guy. I kept the hair for a bit. Every day I would look in the mirror and absolutely hate my hair. But I put all that time in growing it. Finally this month I realized that I was holding on to my hair for nobody but the idea of her. I finally shaved it again. I felt a huge stress lift off my shoulders. When I saw 9% of the critics on Rotten Tomatoes didn't like The Shawshank Redemption, I knew that I could be the most amazing person on earth and at least 9% of the people in this world wouldn't like me. It was actually extremely freeing. Not to degrade myself in front of other people, especially about superficial stuff like my looks or whether or not people like me, etc. I learned that sometimes people never become a better person, and you have to let it go to feel better. Allow me to elaborate. My mother has always been distant, cold, selfish and manipulative. I remember very little of my past, and I keep forgetting moments of my life that left a mark on me. I faintly remember not being fed properly, beaten when I didn't listen as a kid, having to walk to school in my socks after a night of rain, which led to me being driven back home by the teachers and given a few days off school. I remember not getting things that everyone else had, which made me that weird kid that doesn't have much in common with anyone else. I can't remember what I felt at that point in my life. It's too faded. But I remember talking to my teacher after somehow beating up a kid. That I had bouts of anger. Not being able to keep my temper. At this point I was about 8 years old, I think. I remember once, when I was 5, maybe 6, that my mother took me to kind of an orphanage. I was too young to understand. And the only thing I can remember feeling and thinking was that I was waiting for mom to come and pick me up and go back home. I remember 3 years of my time at the orphanage being hellish. There were some truly sadistic kids there, and me being the youngest and easiest to bully and manipulate. Well, I faintly remember thinking some of the older kids there were truly evil. Like in a story, when I was almost 8 years old I was sent back to my mom to see if I could live with her. I never understood why these things happened. I just think I went with it or something. My mother couldn't keep me for a year before I was sent back to the orphanage and things went back to what I thought was normal. Continual bullying, harassment, fighting and what was allowed to do and not. 9 days before I turned 10, I was administered to a foster home. I remember telling a kind worker at the orphanage that I had been waiting for this day to come, and I couldn't fathom it was real. My foster parents were kind. I was lucky. They were out to give me the family I never had. They weren't in for the money they got, and spent all the money they received on me directly, getting me toys, candy, you know, the needs of a kid. That's never really gotten anything extraordinary. I won't say I was spoiled, but I was reconditioned. Fast forward almost a decade, I'm about 19 and I've been through it, both good and bad. I've had fights with my foster parents, gotten on their good and bad side. I've learned to reflect, not just upon my actions but others' actions. I spend my days reflecting upon what others do, why they do the things they do, and how I react. Was I in the wrong, or was I not? It's the 10th of February and my mother's new husband sends me a passive-aggressive message on Messenger, asking what I'm going to do for my bio mom for Mother's Day. I'm livid. My foster brother sees him distraught. He grabs my phone and sees the message. Has livid. My foster parents has been treated poorly by my bio mom. They're confused when they see the message. Her husband probably sees her as a saint. That I have probably done something wrong to be partially disowned. But I'm sure has been fed lies. Because a child is never at fault when it comes down to the fact that a parent cannot take care of them when they decided to bring the child into the world. My brother was close to finding the address of my mother and the jackbud married and talk them up. This isn't being dramatic. My brother has a very strong personality. I tell him that I'm already with my mother and I've given her a few gifts to celebrate her Mother's Day. Because she's done infinitely more for me than my biological mother ever has. In fact, they're repairing my broken mind. The mind my biological mother smashed to pieces. My mother sends me a message later saying she's been bent over backwards trying to keep a sort of functional relationship between me and her. But if forgetting the dates and time of several times I've been supposed to meet her for a few hours over the time of a decade means bending over backwards to keep a relationship between us, then I have no words to give. I tell her the truth. I say exactly what I want to say formulated as an equally long wall of text as she sent me. One I wrote straight from my heart. I feel like she owes me. She owes me because I've always been given the shortest straw. For every mistake she did, I always paid the price and it's a price I cannot pay through a life's amount of work. She thinks she always draws the shortest straw and the amount of self-pity and self-entitlement in that is disgusting. She legitimately thinks I'm the problem when she emotionally scarred me for the rest of the life. Now I'm here, about 20 years old and I've cut my emotional tie with my biological mother. That tie died when she blurted out that I owe her, and I don't want to meet her because I feel like it beat her up, as well as her husband. But then she'd win. It'd be the ultimate butt for seeing all the lies she's been spreading about me. The distanced half of my family would seem the absolute truth. I've learned that you can't expect people to change for the better and sometimes it's better to walk away from these things, no matter how personal they are. I have parents, but it's not her. It's my foster parents. And they taught me everything I needed to know through thick and thin up to that critical point of my life. People are who they are, and they're responsible for themselves. Wishful thinking doesn't always cut it. I've left out some things that happened that might have strengthened my points, but I deemed them too personal, and I feel like that's fair. If you have any questions then ask away. I will answer all of them. Thank you for reading this. Do what you love. Find what you love. Give love because time passes relentlessly, and all that matters are good memories over perpetual stress. Chase dreams daily into reality and let your journey begin with drive like no other. You don't actually understand what people are going through or what they're talking about if you never experienced it. That a lot of thoughts I had were not mine. They came from my parents, society, etc. And I could change them easily. Cognitive behavioral therapy, meditation. Depression is rarely a thing anymore. I can't keep waiting for someone to come to me. I have to enjoy my own company, whether I like it or not. I should start complimenting myself and get used to it, because it's not like anyone in the future will do so. That if I keep eating and gaining weight I would be dead before 50. Now after 9 months of work I lost 40 pounds. Coming from someone who has lost 80 pounds, 1/3 of my body weight. Great job on your weight loss! Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Changing your eating habits is incredibly difficult. Keep up the great work. To come to mind. 1. That I needed to seek help for my depression, anxiety, self-harm, and suicidal thoughts. 2. That I'm transgender and non-binary. Actually that others don't give a ref about me if it doesn't concern them directly, thus any embarrassment is made relative. That my family is toxic. Also to care about more about my mental health. And also to think that I'm worth living for. When I was younger I always assumed older/other people knew more or better, had it together, knew what was going on and what they were doing. Turns out everyone is making poop up as they go along. Not to hang on to friendships where you no longer have anything in common. It's okay to outgrow people when you're 30, and all at different stages in life. Maybe, just maybe, all the things you are taught to think and believe as a kid are worth looking into. That maybe you should find out on your own what you really believe about the world and life itself. When I was very young, I heard a train approach, become close, and finally pass. This realization of time passing became central to my understanding of time. I realized immediately that everything about our existence is ephemeral. That I don't have to be nice all the time or liked by everyone. I used to put so much pressure on myself to be everything to everyone at all times that I was never myself. But in adulthood I've realized that I don't like most of the people who like me, and that's okay. Not everybody gets along. Now that I've put more emphasis on being genuine than being liked, I actually have had an easier time making friends. So, the whole be yourself thing was true all along. Worrying is a complete and utter waste of time. It changes nothing. I don't worry about anything. That everyone who bullies you for not being normal usually can't tell you what normal is, probably because they don't truly know themselves. So why not embrace my craziness? As long as nobody is getting hurt and I'm able to regulate my emotions when needed, why not be strange? My friend always spoke about this proverb, this too shall pass. I always thought it was some lame poop until one day it hit me in the face, like bus about something I was feeling. It doesn't matter if you are down or on top of the world in this moment. Life is fleeting, and whatever your current situation, good or bad, this too shall pass. That nothing in this life really matters at all. You can do all the right things, but get totally ducked in the end. That noon is promised a happy life. The world does not owe you anything, and to be honest, it seems living is not a blessing, but yet a way to just figure out how to get out of problems best you can, while life throws a ton of poop to you. That true love, like it's shown in fairy tales, doesn't exist, and all love, even the best love, takes work, sacrifice, and commitment, but it's worth it. That there's really no point in life, for me at least, the only reason why I'm still trying is to pay back loved ones. That's it, life is just too boring lol. No matter how big of a splash you make in this world, Whether you're Teddy Roosevelt or Justin Bieber, eventually nobody gives a shit. Not everyone has a hidden agenda. Most of the time, it's safe to assume everyone is just doing their best until proved otherwise. That most suffering in life is caused by wishing things were different than they are in reality, aka clinging to preconceived ideas instead of just looking at what's actually happening and working forward from there. If your enough stuff in your life starts going sideways, then at some point you will start wanting to fail. Because then you'll have an excuse to be miserable rather than putting yourself back together. That there isn't always someone around who is going to encourage / support / congratulate you, so you're just going to have to do it for yourself. That I should never rely on someone for my happiness. That I need to be happy on my and share my happiness with those. Last but not least, and this is something I still need to come to terms with, is I can't always control what happens in my life, but I can control how I react to it. My parents were separated since before I can remember. I lived with my mom, visited my dad's side of the family every other Christmas, long distance. Frequent visits weren't feasible. I generally liked that side of my family. They were kind and personable despite the fact that we struggled to relate to each other. But my dad himself was thoroughly unpleasant. Not abusive or anything. Just supremely unlikable as a human being. Every cartoonish stereotype you've ever heard of a libertarian. The kind of guy who, when discussing travel plans, physically cannot let the word Massachusetts go unchallenged by an interjection of Taxachusetts, even if it's multiple times in one sentence. He once told me a story about some kind of Girl Scout fundraising event he happened upon. A bake sale with some aspect of the girls also pitching their ways to improve society. I'm not clear on how that factored in, but anyways, one of them had the idea that the rich should use some of their wealth to help the needy. He boasted that he, a grown man, remember, lectured her, a little girl, remember, on the unmatched evils and the inevitable failures of communism, until she agreed that her dream, charity, remember, was fundamentally wrong. Close bracket. Back to the subject at hand. One time he happens to come to our city, so we go to hang out with him a couple times around town over the course of a couple days. I'm a teenager at the time. My sister's a few years older than me and continues to be to this day. At the end of the last of these few short visits, he singles me out and specifically invites me to come see him where he lives. Promises to pay for the tickets and everything. Everything I'd ever been brought up to believe tells me that I have an obligation to do this because he is family. But life as a moody teenager is stressful enough already, and I just can't muster the strength to subject myself to that experience. I can barely stand visiting with the family members I like. This would be without even having them there, so I quietly decline. He doesn't push beyond asking if I'm sure. I don't elaborate or particularly emote. Outside of my own shame-filled head, no drama is happening at all. After we part, and we are out of eyeshot, my sister hugs me. She commends me on having done something she doesn't think she's strong enough to do. Underscore. My shameful weakness was her aspirational strength. I had never before so starkly understood how the same response to the same dilemma can mean such different things to different people. My way of thinking was not the only way, and beyond that, not the only valid way. Thinking of the hypothetical she implied where the same offer is posed to her and she feels the same way I do, that she's expected to say yes, but knows doing so will only cause her anguish. I instinctively know that I want her to stand up for her own happiness over his. Why didn't I think that way about my own happiness? So, anyways, now I do. I'm not the only factor in a decision, obviously, but I'm one factor, and one that's no less significant. I'm less moody now, but to be fair, that might just be my adult brain chemistry. Is an interpretation I thought of during a phase of my life. It's from the phrase "all I know is I know nothing." The fact that I understand I know nothing means as a human being with hope for the future I have the chance to learn about everything, and I must take it. Worry is prayer for things you don't want nor need in your life. So don't worry. Everything that happens is part of your path. Our experiences help make us who we are. So never forget to learn from your experiences and continue to grow. My success is not your failure. Your success is not my failure. Black sheep of the family here. I was ostracized by my family for graduating college before my brother. I was in a shouting match with my mother over her views of her children and I screamed it at her. Then, it hit me. I walked away, developed better boundaries, and never looked back. That my parent really did not love me. This was a relief, because they said all the words, all the time. Their actions belied that. But I thought I was the one who was crazy and ungrateful. Finally realizing that my sense of being unloved was accurate freed me from the guilt and responsibility. That our outer worlds, the conditions thereof and all the relationships therein, are projections of how we feel about ourselves. To change our lives, we first have to change the way we think and feel. I'm the only one that's gonna get my life together. Nobody else can do it for me regardless of the amount of therapy I have. Some people will lose a game of chess and knock the pieces over and declare they've won because the game wasn't 3D, only to lose the same game in 3D all over again down the road. The kind of people who make up excuses for their behavior by assigning ailment to physical defect and only by their own perception. People who hurt themselves slightly to get out of trouble and call themselves masochistic later on before squishing their face to a disingenuous tear and screaming, lashing out at nothing from anger and enmity. And finally the kind of person who admits to a fault only to ignore reality when it faces a might to eye, and the kind of person who never sees a problem but simply and only ever represents a casual nuisance. I could go on. Edit. My cousin, for instance, who could only genuinely understand the world as long as everybody only ever acts like Pokemon. I don't have a clearer analog. Don't ask. That I need to tune into my feelings honestly more often. As I get older I'm seeing situations where I'd have a right to be annoyed, or people have been rude/inconvenienced me, and I could be annoyed or mad or judgmental if I just instinctively reacted. Now I tend to stop and actually ask myself if I really care. Most of the time I don't. I tell my whole life story cause I desperately need validation from people and I need to chill. It's not just looking for advice. It's not thinking for myself. Confusing. Cause I do value my loved ones' opinions, and I think talking to people helps you figure things, but that means you're playing follow the leader and that's no good. If a set of identical twins each have a child, would they be cousins or siblings? When you think about it, the twins have the same DNA makeup, so wouldn't their child have half of both of their DNA? And also, have you ever seen your neighbors put their groceries into their house? Like they prob seen you do it, but you never saw them. A school fight in 7th grade. A taller kid wanted to kick my butt but I punched him in the belly and he felt coughing. No teacher or parent found out about it. Since then I'm one of his best friends. That the little things and every new decision that I will make moving forward will determine what the outcome of my actual life will be. That I have two lives. The other starts when I realize that I only have one. Indirectly quoted from Naval Ravikant. Smart dude. People will come and go. Some of the parts they have in your life are short. Some are long. They will surprise you, hurt you and heal you. But if they are one of the good ones, don't sabotage it. The good ones are hard to come by. So far, most important one is that it's okay if I don't get an A on every assignment. Took that mentality with me all the way up until my sophomore year of college. Unconditional love is the absence of judgment. Education is better than punishment. Success is one stop on the long road of failures. Everyone is struggling through life and we should always be kind to one another. When my mother passed away and I was down, strangers really made my day with their kindness and compassion. It helped me a lot through my mourning. I realized that other people might be going through hardship and I should also be the kind stranger that could ultimately make their day easier. Realized I didn't have to try to be cool all the time. Nowadays I really just try to be a stand-up guy and people seem to like me more. Still have a lot to learn. Cutting up and being obnoxious in youth group. I was told to be quiet or to leave. Am allowed to leave? Question mark? I excitedly asked. I was told I was. I'd never realized that before. So I left. And I never went back to church again. That was 23 years ago. That there is no God, and that it is up to us humans to discover the universe by advancing our civilization technologically to a type 3 civilization. The Kardashev scale is truly something I appreciate. When you finally move out from your parents' clutches, rent is a thing, and so is a job, / life starts. That I didn't have to tolerate my mother's abuse. Cutting her out of my life was the best choice I could have made. The longer I have gone without speaking to her, the more successful, healthy and happy I've become. That a finished project, say, a plastic spoon, is still made from things found in nature. You can technically make products like that with the right resources and experience. Maybe a spoon was a bad example, but recently tried making rhythm bones, a set of cow ribs, used for percussion. Went and bought 2 ribs from a butcher, cut those down, cooked them, peeled them, cut them, sealed them, finished them, had a pair in the end. Cold bought some for $25, but you get the idea. That others are not giving a second thought to what I wear, or how I styled my hair. You won't mind not existing after you're dead. You didn't mind before you were born. That this is the only life I will ever have, and am damn sure not spending it sitting at a desk 9 hours a day, 5 days a week. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.